Oh, hi guys. Yeah, these are all memoirs and one nonfiction book, but I don't have a problem with you guys. Look, I don't have a problem. Look, these are your recommendations. These are all from you guys. I blame you, okay? I blame you. Okay, so before we actually talk about all of the memoirs and a couple of nonfiction books that I bought, I'm gonna make a cup of coffee because I have a feeling it might be a long one. I hope not, but it might be. Hopefully my children's art will give you something interesting to look at. I know I enjoy it. So let's talk about how this happened. I bought several memoirs, I think over a dozen in the last couple of weeks. So what happened was, I'm gonna put this down. What happened was, is that, and I also made sure that y'all can see Sweet Harry, who will probably fall asleep on my lap in just a few minutes. But what happened was, is that I put up my memoirs video. It was all about how I enjoy memoir as a genre for comfort reads. I love the first person narrative about someone's life. I like to hear the juicy details, actually literally in my ears, because I love to listen to memoirs. I do read them also. And that it's a way, my mother is a memoir reader. Hi Mom, if you're watching. My mom is a voracious memoir reader, and I often pick up memoirs in order to recommend them to her if it's something that I think that she will like. And I know her very sort of specific taste in memoirs, right? I can judge pretty well, I think. Mom, tell me if I'm wrong. So what happened was is that I put up that video, and then the comments, as they do, they flood in with all of these wonderful recommendations. And I was reading through the comments, I was pulling up tabs on my computer, and I was looking up the books that you all were recommending to me. And then what was happening is that every book that sounded delightful, I just put in my thrift books cart. Then what happened, the next part of the story, was that I had quite a bit of budget left over in my, my husband and I both get a monthly allowance, and I had quite a bit left over. And so what happened, then after, you can see where this is going. So I had some budget left over, and I picked out, I think it was like a dozen memoirs, and I was like, I'm just gonna do it. I'm just gonna buy them and enjoy them and treat myself, and I have this moment where I'm just grow my memoir collection in this one moment. And that's truly basically what happened. So yeah, I bought most of these in one fell swoop. A couple of them were purchases from an earlier, here you go, Harry. I know you guys can't see him, or can you? A little bit? Sweet. Okay, he's falling asleep. Oh my gosh, I love it. Okay, so a couple of them were from a previous order when I ordered books on the Tudors. I ordered a couple of nonfiction books that I was interested in, but most of these was just a one-time thrift books order. It didn't put me too much in debt. It cost me about $65, which averages out to be about $4.50 or maybe $5 a book. Maybe not, I don't remember. It was something like that. It was about $5 a book, and I'm excited to show you. So I have broken them into categories. That way you can watch the video through and then go back to the category you were most interested in. Or if you are just interested in a very specific theme, you can move to that category. So I'll break this video up into chapters. So my first theme is nature. Now, I've actually talked about this book already, but I haven't officially hauled it or officially showed you this book and the idea behind it. And so this is Annie Dillard's Pilgrim at Tinker Creek. And this was a recommendation first by Michael Clark and then by Kelly from Books I'm Not Reading. She finished this last month. I'm gonna link Kelly's video and her review video and her channel down below. Great review, great, I mean, she had good things to say about it. And Michael Clark is a wonderful and thoughtful commenter on my channel who really piques my interest with their recommendations. So, Pilgrim at Tinker Creek won the Nonfiction Pulitzer Prize of its year, and it's really Annie Dillard going out to a spot in nature that's relatively isolated, if not fully isolated, and she's there to be a pilgrim. She's there to observe, to notice, to make note of the things that are happening in nature. I've read the first chapter, and then I've gotten swallowed up by other readings, and it was beautiful. I mean, really stunning. I could see why so many people's heart go pitter-patter when they read Annie Dillard, because she's just got a very unique and profound voice. And I mean, too early to say, but if you see this in a bookstore, if you see this in a bookstore, open it up and read the first page, and I would be surprised if you weren't impressed. Okay, so going along with the Annie Dillard, Michael Clark thing, Michael Clark is the commenter who recommended the book. They also recommended An American Childhood. And what I loved about this was that this is Annie Dillard writing about her childhood, which I believe was in the middle, either like central United States or Midwest. I really don't know, but Annie Dillard, as I mentioned in Pilgrim at Tinker Creek, is just a fantastic writer, and she's probably one that I would be quite interested to read a bit from her. I know I'm jumping the gun on her because I haven't officially read one of her novels or one of her books. Rather, but I have read, she had a piece published in The Atlantic in the last year or so, and I read that, and I've read a couple of other things that she has had published in newspapers, and so I can tell she's very thoughtful and has a very distinct style. So I bought An American Childhood. Okay, then from A.J. Dunn, along with the nature theme, from A.J. Dunn, Reason Writes, they recommended Lab Girl, and then it was seconded by Deea, who is a commenter. Her and I share a love of children's literature and collection of children's books, which is amazing. And so Lab Girl is by Hope Jaron, and it is really about, she's a geobiologist, and she has spent her life studying trees and flowers and nature, and it is her story about developing her love for science. So I was like, okay, and I trust A.J. Dunn, I trust Deea, so I was like, okay, we're good to go. Along the theme with Deea, and I think a couple of other people in the comments, I think Julie from Quebec, maybe? Sorry if I got that wrong, but H is for Hawk, which is by Helen McDonald. And so from what I read on the back, Helen McDonald recently loses her father and then decides to make a pet of a hawk. And I think as she's working through her grief, she's also learning more about the natural world and our predatory instincts and so on and so forth. But this, I mean, it was the best, according to the sticker, it was the best books of New York Times in 2015, their top 10, and I've heard this all over the place. This has got so many accolades, and people say it's just absolutely spectacular. Okay, and then Deea, finally, because I was like, I love nature things, so she recommended me a lot of nature things. So this is A Naturalist Buys an Old Farm by Edwin Way Teale. And Edwin Way Teale actually won the Pulitzer Prize for his nonfiction writing as he was trolloping the globe, I believe. But this is really the opposite of that. And this is where he buys a small acreage in Connecticut, and from there learns how to live essentially on the land. So it's a bit Thoreau-like. It's a bit of like figuring out how to live on the land. But it's unlike his previous work, which I haven't read, but I read the flap and I was reading about it. Unlike his previous work, which really talked about a huge pilgrimage spanning several miles, this is the opposite. This is like he is stuck, or he is living in a microcosm of what he had previously traveled, essentially. And so I was excited about this. There are pictures in it, older pictures. It's an older book, but I thought when I go into books a bit more blind, I guess, like when I don't know much about the author, I will look up the author and I will see like what are they known for, what have they written previously. And so Edwin Wade Teal did win the Pulitzer Prize for his nature writing. So I was like, okay, that seems like a fairly safe choice to dive into somebody who has won an award for their nature writing, and then they wrote a book in a similar vein as that. I hope that made sense. Okay, my next grouping is the Holocaust. So going from nature to the Holocaust. This first book I found at my Goodwill, and I shockingly haven't read it, which is slightly embarrassing. It's also on my 1001 children's books you must read before you die. Children spans from birth to 18 years old. So this is at the upper end of that scale. And this is The Diary of a Young Girl by Anne Frank. So Anne Frank, as I was looking at it, she fled Amsterdam, which was her home, and her family goes into hiding, and she takes note and memorializes her experience in a diary. And so that's what this is. The next one is really quite sad. The premise is really sad, and it was a recommendation from Silje, who's here on BookTube. She does wonderful vlogs, quiet vlogs. I really love her her vlogs and her videos. They're just so like calming and sweet. If you don't follow Silje, please do. So she recommended An Exclusive Love by Johanna Ajorn. Or Johanna, probably. Anyways, Ajorn's grandparents survived the Holocaust. If I am remembering correctly. Yes, they survived the Holocaust. And then something like 30 years later, both of them take their life at the same time. And so these were her grandparents, and I think this is her account of their love story. So I thought that was really interesting. It's a short little book. Maybe I will get to it this month. LOL, because I'm so busy with reading. All right, the next one was recommended by several people, but Marilyn Maya Mendoza has been the cheerleader for this book, as well as Michael Clark. So this is Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. And Frankl is essentially obsessed or intrigued by this existential question of existence. And so as he is fighting for his life, living through the Holocaust as a Jew, I believe, maybe not, gracious me. So I believe he was in the concentration camps, fighting for his life, working to survive, and the pressing question on his mind was, if there is no account of my life, did I even exist? And so this book is about that question, I believe. I've known about this book for years. It's been on my mental TBR to be read list for years and years and years. And so Viktor Frankl. And then what happened was that I actually accidentally, off of thrift books, bought A Man's Search for Meaning, the young adult version. And then I thought about returning it, but I have a nephew who is 13 and would probably really enjoy something like this. And so I thought, when I see him next, I'll just give him that. Okay, moving on from the Holocaust, let's talk about friendship. This recommendation I had known about, and then Michael Clark reminded me of it. And one of the books is a recommendation from my mom. So hi, Mom. Oh my gosh, Harry is like falling off my lap asleep. He's like doing a swan dive backwards. Okay, so the first one is Truth and Beauty by Ann Patchett. Ann Patchett writes primarily fiction, I believe, and oh, I should have started with the other one, but that's all right. This one was a recommendation from my mom specifically, and she talks about, in this memoir, she talks about her friendship with Lucy Greeley, who is a poet, and Lucy Greeley's suffering as somebody who had a lot of health complications that you could tell, that you could see in her face and in her body. And Ann Patchett talks about her friendship with her and what that meant. And I believe this is after Lucy dies, so it's also about grief. So, like I said, I should have started with this, but an autobiography of a face by Lucy Greeley. She had the lower third of her jaw removed in, I believe, high school. And so this talks about her life, and she was a poet, so my expectations are actually slightly high, because I would imagine that she would write her prose similar to poetry. And it's said to have been beautiful, but she had just a lot of health complications, and this really chronicles her journey through those complications and what they mean, and her struggle with that. So that's why I wanted to read these two together, because Ann Patchett talks about Lucy Greeley, and then there's an autobiography of Vase, which is Lucy Greeley's work. Okay, so the friendship category is over, the two books and that. The other ones I would say are just wacky. One of them is even called Cuckoo Land. So Cuckoo Land is by Gloria Norris. And this is, I believe, a recommendation from Julie with a J and a big red J. So Gloria Norris, according to this, lived in the projects of New Hampshire. And so the way it's described on the inside flap is that she is the shadow of her father. She loves her father so much. And then something happens. It doesn't say what, but something happens that changes her family and the community. And the change is significant and brutal. So, interested about that. And then, I've never heard of this author, which I'm sort of surprised. This was a recommendation by Ashmi. David Wojnarowicz. I'm so sorry, David. I hope you never see this. But it's called Close to Knives, a memoir of disintegration. And I believe, the sentence that really struck me was that street life, drugs, art and nature, family, AIDS, politics, friendship, and acceptance. So the author challenges us to examine our lives. And I believe it's his struggle with drugs and sexuality and art and what it all means to him. This is, I believe, more of a book of essays. And he is a serial memoirist, which is why I'm shocked. I've never heard it. There are other serial memoirists that I would not read again, like Augustine Burroughs. Not for me. Okay, the last two, I couldn't categorize. I had no idea. So one of them was George. He said that he's a wonderful and amazing commenter who I always, like, my eyes perk up. I get excited when I see his comments because they're always really thoughtful, really interesting, and he always has great recommendations. So this is Home to India by Santha Ramaru. It's a small hardcover without a dust jacket. I believe one of the more expensive books because it's just not readily available anymore. But Home to India is about a young person growing up or moving to India in their childhood in the 1940s and then growing up there. I thought it sounded really interesting and it really piqued my interest at the time. And then the final book is a Steve Donahue. My hauls would not be the same without Steve Donahue. He always makes an appearance. And it's Peter Ackroyd's The Tudors. This is a history book about the Tudor period in England. Ackroyd has a part 1, which is pre-Tudor period. But I was really interested in the Tudors. And so what happened was that I emailed Steve Donahue about recommendations for the Tudors. He told me that he would make a whole starter kit for me about the tutors, and he did. And Peter Ackroyd was on there. So I'm excited to read Peter Ackroyd. I know that he's got a lot of credit with people that I admire, including Steve Donahue. And I thought, why not just start here? And this is my nonfiction pick for my tutor reading. All right, so that is it. Lots and lots of goodies, lots and lots of wonderful things. Thank you so much for being here. Oh my gosh, y'all are gonna like laugh. Okay. Thank you. All right, so thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for watching. And I'm sure I'll see you guys soon. I would do a Steve stack, but my hands are a bit full right now. Okay, bye guys.